Introduction. Imagine this. It's Friday afternoon. Your paycheck has just landed in your bank account. For a brief moment, you feel in control. You tell yourself, this month will be different. You'll save more, spend less, maybe even start investing. But then life happens. The rent is due. The car needs fuel. Subscriptions renew automatically. Groceries become more expensive. A dinner with friends turns into an impulse purchase. A few online orders arrive at your door. Pop, before you realize it, that paycheck, the one you worked an entire month to earn, is almost gone. Then Monday arrives, and so does the alarm clock. You wake up, not because you've achieved financial freedom, but because your money disappeared before it ever had the chance to protect your future. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever stopped to wonder why this cycle never seems to end? Why do some people earn six figures and still live paycheck to paycheck, while others earn far less, yet somehow become financially independent? The answer isn't found in how much they earn. It's hidden in something far more powerful. They've learned one lesson that most people never discover. They stopped asking, how can I earn more money? And started asking, how can my money earn more money? That single shift changes everything. The wealthiest people in the world don't simply work harder. They build systems. They acquire assets. They create income that continues flowing long after today's work is finished. Every dollar becomes an employee. Every investment becomes another worker. Every smart financial decision quietly builds a future where money works harder than they ever could. This isn't about becoming rich overnight. It isn't about risky investments or secret formulas reserved for millionaires. It's about understanding a different game, the game that quietly separates those who spend their entire lives working for money from those whose money eventually works for them. In this audiobook, you'll discover 10 timeless principles that have helped ordinary people build extraordinary financial freedom. Not through luck, not through inheritance, but through discipline, ownership, and a completely different way of thinking about every dollar they earn. Because financial freedom doesn't begin when you make more money. It begins the moment your money starts making decisions for your future instead of your past. So, take a deep breath. Leave behind everything you've been taught about earning a living, because today we're going to learn how to build a life where money finally starts working for you instead of the other way around. Chapter 1. Why most people work hard, yet never build wealth. Let me tell you about two friends. They graduated from college in the same year. They started their first jobs only weeks apart. Both were intelligent. Both worked hard. Both dreamed of becoming financially free one day. For the first few years, their lives looked almost identical. Every month, they received a paycheck. Every year, they celebrated a small raise. And every time life became stressful, they rewarded themselves with something new. A better phone, a nicer apartment, a newer car. After all, they believed they deserved it. Years passed. Then one evening, they met again for dinner. The first friend arrived in a luxury SUV, designer watch, tailored suit. From the outside, he looked incredibly successful, but halfway through the meal, he quietly admitted something. If I lose my job next month, I'm finished. The car had payments. The apartment had a mortgage. And the credit cards carried balances. His expensive lifestyle demanded an expensive paycheck. He wasn't wealthy. He was simply maintaining an expensive image. A few minutes later, the second friend arrived. His clothes were simple. His watch was old. His car had over 100,000 miles on it. Nothing about him screamed success. But when the conversation turned to money, he smiled. If I stopped working tomorrow, I'd still be okay. His rental properties continued producing income. His investments paid dividends. His online business generated sales while they were sitting in that restaurant. His money had quietly learned to work without him. Two people, similar incomes, completely different futures. What created the gap? Not intelligence, not luck, not opportunity. One learned how to spend money. The other learned how to employ it. And that's the difference most people never discover. From childhood, we're taught one financial rule: study hard, get a good job, work hard, earn more money. But almost nobody teaches the next lesson. What should happen after the paycheck arrives? That's where the entire financial game changes. Because earning money is only the beginning. The real question is, what does your money do after you earn it? For most people, the answer is painfully predictable. Money arrives. Bills are paid. Shopping begins. The account returns almost to zero. And the cycle repeats again next month. It's a treadmill. Lots of movement. Very little progress. The wealthy see the same paycheck very differently. They don't ask, what can I buy? They ask, what can this money build? That single question changes every financial decision that follows. Imagine every dollar you earn is a new employee joining your company. Most people hire that employee, then immediately fire it. They spend it on something that loses value the moment they buy it. A luxury item, a trend, an impulse purchase. That dollar works for only a few minutes, then disappears forever. But wealthy people think differently. Before spending a single dollar, they give it a mission. Perhaps it buys part of a business. Perhaps it purchases an investment. Perhaps it helps create something that generates even more income. That one employee goes out into the world and returns with friends. Soon, $1 becomes two, two become four, four become 10. Not because money is magical, but because it was given a job instead of a destination. This is why two people can earn exactly the same salary, yet end up living completely different lives 20 years later. Income matters, but behavior matters far more. Money is like water. If you don't direct its flow, it will always find the easiest way to disappear. Advertisements compete for it. Social media influences it. Lifestyle inflation quietly consumes it. The world constantly encourages you to spend. Very few voices encourage you to own. That's exactly why financial education is so important. Because wealth isn't built by accident. It's built through thousands of ordinary decisions, repeated consistently over many years. The rich understand something most people overlook. They don't measure success by what they can afford today. They measure success by what will continue paying them tomorrow. Every financial decision becomes a question of freedom. Does this purchase make me richer? Or does it simply make me look richer? Those are two very different outcomes. One creates options, the other creates obligations. Think about the last major purchase you made. Did it increase your future income? Or did it increase your future expenses? There's nothing wrong with enjoying life. Money should absolutely improve your quality of life. But there's an important difference between rewarding yourself and quietly selling pieces of your future. Every unnecessary liability asks for more of your time, more work, more stress, more dependence on the next paycheck. An asset does the opposite. It slowly buys pieces of your freedom back, 1 month at a time, one investment at a time, one smart decision at a time. That is why the first step toward financial independence isn't earning more. It's learning to see money differently. Because the day you stop viewing your paycheck as something to spend and start viewing it as something to deploy, is the day your financial future begins changing forever. And that single shift in thinking will prepare you for the first real wealth-building principle. Build assets before you build your lifestyle. Chapter 2. Build assets before you upgrade your lifestyle. Imagine receiving the biggest raise of your life. Your salary increases by 30%. For the first few days, you feel unstoppable. You tell yourself, finally, all my financial problems are over. But then, something strange begins to happen. The apartment you've always wanted suddenly seems affordable. The luxury car you've been admiring no longer feels out of reach. The expensive vacations, the designer clothes, the latest technology, one by one, they quietly enter your life. 6 months later, you look around and realize something shocking. You earn far more than you did a year ago, yet somehow, you still feel financially trapped. How is that possible? Because income alone never creates wealth. Lifestyle inflation destroys more fortunes than low salaries ever will. Most people don't become poor because they earn too little. They stay financially stuck because every increase in income is immediately followed by an increase in spending. The richer they become, the more expensive their lives become. As a result, their freedom never grows. Only their monthly obligations do. This is one of the greatest financial traps in modern society. We're taught to celebrate success by buying bigger things. A promotion? Buy a better car. A bonus? Upgrade the house. A salary increase? Increase your monthly lifestyle. But the wealthy often do something completely different. When their income grows, their lifestyle barely changes. Instead, their investments grow, their assets grow, their ownership grows. From the outside, it doesn't look exciting. Nobody applauds the person who quietly buys another investment instead of another luxury watch. But 10 years later, the results speak louder than appearances ever could. Think of two neighbors. Both receive an extra $10,000. The first neighbor immediately upgrades his car. It smells new, looks impressive, friends compliment him. But every month, insurance costs more, maintenance costs more, depreciation quietly eats away at its value. 5 years later, the car is worth a fraction of what he paid. The second neighbor makes a different decision. Instead of buying something that loses value, she purchases an income-producing asset. Perhaps dividend-paying stocks, perhaps a small rental property, perhaps she starts building a digital business. At first, nothing about her life appears different. No flashy purchases, no dramatic lifestyle changes, but something invisible has started happening. Her money begins producing more money, month after month, year after year. The asset quietly works in the background. One decision creates ongoing expenses. The other creates ongoing income. That's why wealthy people rarely ask, "Can I afford this?" They ask, "Will this purchase make future purchases easier?" There's an enormous difference. An expensive vacation may create wonderful memories, but an income-producing asset can eventually pay for dozens of vacations. One satisfies today, the other expands tomorrow. This is why Robert Kiyosaki famously explained that the wealthy focus on buying assets, while many people unknowingly fill their lives with liabilities disguised as success. It's not that successful people never enjoy luxury. They absolutely do. They simply reverse the order. First, they build the machine. Then, they enjoy the rewards produced by that machine. Most people do the opposite. They buy the rewards first, then spend decades trying to pay for them. Imagine planting an apple tree. Would you cut it down after harvesting the very first apple? Of course not. You'd continue caring for it, because next season it produces even more fruit. Assets work the same way. Every investment, every business, every productive piece of property is another tree in your financial orchard. The larger the orchard becomes, the less you depend on your own physical labor. Eventually, your assets begin producing enough fruit to feed you without constant effort. That's what financial freedom actually looks like, not endless luxury, not private jets, not giant mansions. Freedom simply means having enough productive assets that your basic life no longer depends entirely on your next paycheck. Unfortunately, modern advertising encourages the exact opposite. Every day you're told to upgrade, replace, buy newer, buy bigger, buy now. Very few companies profit from teaching patience. Almost nobody advertises delayed gratification, because patience doesn't generate immediate sales. But patience creates extraordinary wealth. Every time you postpone a purchase in order to acquire another asset, you're making a quiet investment in your future freedom. No one may notice today, but your future self certainly will. Here's another important truth. Building assets isn't reserved for millionaires. You don't need enormous wealth to begin. You need consistency. Buying your first investment, creating your first digital product, owning your first share of a company, starting your first small business. Every empire begins with one asset, then another, then another. Not through luck, but through repetition. Remember, the goal isn't to appear wealthy. The goal is to become financially independent. Those are completely different destinations. One impresses strangers, the other changes your life. So before your next major purchase, pause for just a moment. Ask yourself one simple question. Will this expense make me work harder tomorrow, or will it quietly begin working for me instead? The answer to that question may determine where your financial future goes from here. Chapter 3. The wealthy give every dollar a mission. Imagine you're standing at an airport. Hundreds of people rush past you. Some know exactly where they're going. They have a boarding pass, a destination, a schedule. Others have no ticket, no plan, no idea where they belong. Now imagine your money behaves the same way. Every paycheck that enters your life is like a group of travelers arriving at the airport. The question is, do they each have a destination? Or are they simply wandering until they disappear? For most people, money arrives with excitement and leaves with confusion. By the end of the month, they can't explain exactly where it went. There wasn't one huge purchase, no financial emergency, just dozens of small decisions. A coffee here, a subscription there, a late-night online order, an unnecessary upgrade. Each expense feels harmless on its own, but together, they quietly erase an entire month's hard work. The wealthy understand something different. Before money even reaches their account, it already has instructions. Every dollar has a purpose. Every dollar has a mission. Some dollars are assigned to investments. Some strengthen emergency reserves. Some purchase income-producing assets. Others are reinvested to expand existing wealth. Very little money is left unemployed, because idle money rarely stays idle for long. If you don't assign your money a purpose, the world will gladly assign one for you. Advertisements are waiting. Social media is waiting. Retail stores are waiting. The economy spends billions of dollars every year convincing you to spend money that hasn't even arrived yet. Think about that for a moment. Entire industries are built around directing your money toward their goals, not yours. That's why financial freedom isn't just about earning. It's about leadership. You must become the CEO of every dollar that enters your life. Imagine owning a company with 100 employees. Would you allow them to walk into the office every morning without giving them work? Of course not. Every employee receives responsibilities, deadlines, objectives, performance expectations. Money should be managed exactly the same way. Each dollar should know its assignment before it leaves your account. $1 might purchase part of a dividend-paying company. Another may help fund your next rental property. Another may finance a digital product that earns income for years. Every dollar becomes a worker instead of a visitor. This is one of the simplest habits separating financially successful people from everyone else. They stop asking, "How much money do I have?" and begin asking, "How many dollars are currently working for me?" Those are two completely different measurements. Someone earning a high salary may appear wealthy, but if every dollar disappears into monthly expenses, their income is working harder than their money ever will. Meanwhile, someone earning less may quietly own dozens of productive assets. Every month, those assets send money back, not because the owner worked more hours, but because the money itself kept working. That's the real objective: turning income into employees, instead of turning income into memories that quickly fade. Another important lesson is understanding cash flow. Imagine two rivers. The first river constantly flows into a lake, but the lake has dozens of holes at the bottom. No matter how much water enters, the level never rises. The second river flows into a lake with only one small outlet. Day after day, the water level quietly increases. Eventually, it becomes powerful enough to create entirely new rivers. Your finances behave exactly the same way. It's not only about how much enters, it's about how much remains productive after it arrives. That's why wealthy people pay close attention to where money flows. Before making almost any purchase, they ask one simple question: will this decision put money into my pocket or quietly take money out of it? At first, the question feels almost too simple, but over decades, it transforms lives. Imagine spending $1,000 on the newest smartphone. Within a few years, its value has almost disappeared. Technology changes. New models arrive. Repairs become expensive. Now imagine using that same money to purchase an investment producing returns year after year. Eventually, the investment itself may earn enough to buy that same phone. Without reducing your original capital, one purchase consumes wealth. The other creates future purchasing power. That's how wealthy people think, not because they dislike spending money, but because they understand timing. They know assets purchased today can eventually finance tomorrow's lifestyle. Many people believe financial freedom requires extraordinary discipline. In reality, it often begins with extraordinary awareness. Awareness of where your money goes. Awareness of what each purchase truly costs. Awareness of the opportunities silently disappearing every time money is spent without intention. Here's something most people never consider. Every dollar you spend has two prices. The first is obvious, the amount shown on the receipt. The second price is invisible. It's every future dollar that money could have earned, had it been invested instead. That invisible cost is what separates consumers from investors. Consumers see today's price. Investors see tomorrow's potential. Neither approach is entirely right or wrong. Life should absolutely be enjoyed, but the wealthy simply make one adjustment. They allow tomorrow to become stronger. Before making today more comfortable, Because once your assets begin producing reliable income, enjoying life becomes much easier. Your investments begin funding your experiences. Your ownership begins financing your freedom. Your money finally becomes something more than paper. It becomes a workforce. And once every dollar has a mission, you'll discover something remarkable. You no longer feel like you're chasing money. Instead, money begins quietly building the future you've been working toward all along. That is the moment financial independence stops feeling like a dream and starts becoming a system. Chapter 4: Why Real Estate Has Created More Millionaires Than Almost Any Other Investment. Imagine this. You wake up on the first day of a new month, before you've answered a single email, before you've driven to work, before you've earned your first dollar. A notification appears on your phone. Rental payment received. You haven't clocked in. You haven't sold anything. You haven't traded another hour of your life. Yet money has already arrived. Now imagine that happening every single month, year after year. That's one of the reasons real estate has been one of the most powerful wealth-building tools throughout history. Not because every property becomes incredibly valuable overnight, but because a well-chosen property can continue paying you long after you've finished working. This is why Andrew Carnegie famously observed that a remarkable percentage of millionaires built their fortunes through real estate ownership. The principle isn't complicated. It's patient. While most people buy a home hoping one day it will be worth more, investors ask a different question. Will this property pay me before I sell it? That one question completely changes the game, because appreciation is wonderful, but cash flow changes lives. Imagine two people buying similar properties. The first person buys a beautiful home simply because they love living there. There's nothing wrong with that. But every month, the property asks for money, mortgage payments, insurance, maintenance, property taxes. The home provides comfort, but it doesn't produce income. Now imagine someone else buying a modest apartment in a growing neighborhood. Instead of living there, they rent it to someone who needs a place to live every month. The tenant sends rent. Part of that payment covers the mortgage. Part covers expenses. And whatever remains becomes profit. Month after month, someone else is helping pay for an asset that will eventually belong entirely to the investor. Think about how extraordinary that really is. You're slowly increasing your ownership, while another person helps finance the journey. Time becomes your business partner. That's the true beauty of rental income. It doesn't arrive all at once. It arrives consistently, quietly, predictably, just like a tree producing fruit every season. The wealthy understand something many people overlook. Consistency is often more valuable than intensity. Receiving steady income every month creates stability. It reduces dependence on a paycheck. It creates options. Eventually, those monthly payments begin covering more than just the mortgage. They may pay household expenses, fund new investments, support retirement, or finance the purchase of another property. That's how portfolios grow. One property becomes two, two become four, four become 10. Not through luck, but through patience and reinvestment. Of course, real estate isn't a magical investment. It rewards careful thinking. Location matters. A small apartment in an area with growing employment opportunities, reliable transportation, good schools, and increasing population may outperform a much larger house in a declining town. The building itself isn't always the most valuable part. Often, it's where that building stands. Successful investors don't simply buy property. They buy future demand. They ask, will more people want to live here 5 years from now? Because demand creates occupancy. Occupancy creates rental income. And rental income builds financial freedom. Another powerful advantage of real estate is leverage. Imagine wanting to purchase a valuable asset worth far more than the cash you currently have. With many investments, you must pay the full amount yourself. Real estate works differently. Financial institutions are often willing to finance a significant portion of the purchase because the property itself serves as collateral. That means you may control a much larger asset while investing only part of its value up front. As years pass, your tenants continue contributing through their rent. Meanwhile, the loan balance gradually decreases, your ownership quietly increases, and if the property's value also rises over time, your wealth grows from multiple directions at once. Very few investments offer that combination. cash flow, loan reduction, potential appreciation, and the ability to use leverage responsibly. But here's an important reminder. Buying property simply because everyone says prices will rise is speculation. Buying property because it produces reliable monthly income is investing. Those are not the same thing. The wealthy rarely gamble on hope. They build around predictable cash flow. Another lesson real estate teaches is patience. You won't become wealthy after collecting your first month's rent. You probably won't become wealthy after your first year either. But 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, those are entirely different conversations. While others spend decades upgrading lifestyles, property owners often spend decades quietly upgrading ownership. That's why real estate has remained one of the foundations of long-term wealth. It encourages thinking in years instead of weekends, in decades instead of days. Because true wealth rarely arrives with excitement. More often, it arrives one monthly payment at a time, one tenant at a time, one property at a time, until one morning, you wake up and realize something remarkable. Your assets have been working all night while you were sleeping. And for the first time, money is no longer something you chase. It's something that's beginning to come looking for you. Chapter 5. Build digital assets that keep earning long after you're done working. Imagine spending 6 months building something. You pour your knowledge into it. You stay up late refining every detail. You finally publish it. Then, instead of starting over the next morning, it keeps working without you. Someone buys it while you're asleep. Another person discovers it from the other side of the world. A third recommends it to a friend. By the time you wake up, your work has already earned money. Now compare that with a traditional job. You work for 8 hours. You get paid for 8 hours. The moment you stop working, the income stops too. That's how most people spend their entire lives. They sell time. But time has one problem. You only have 24 hours in a day. No matter how talented you are, no matter how hard you work, you cannot create a 25th hour. The wealthy understand this limitation better than anyone. That's why they become obsessed with building something different. Not businesses that depend entirely on them, but assets that continue creating value long after the work is finished. Today, the internet has made this easier than at any other moment in history. Think about a YouTube video. The creator spends a few hours researching, a few more recording, then editing. Finally, they upload it. That could have been the end of the story. Instead, the video continues finding viewers 1 week later, 1 month later, 1 year later, sometimes even 10 years later. The creator did the work once, but the internet continues delivering that work to new people every single day. That is the power of a digital asset. It separates effort from income. The same idea applies to an online course. Imagine you're a fitness coach. Traditionally, you coach one client at a time. If you want to earn more, you need more clients, more appointments, more hours. But what happens if you record everything you know into a complete online program? Now, 100 people can learn from you at the same time. 1,000 people. Even 10,000. Without asking you to repeat the same lesson again and again. The value remains exactly the same. Only the scale changes. That's leverage. And leverage is one of the greatest advantages the digital world has ever created. The same principle applies to writers. An author spends months creating a book. After publication, every sale becomes another stream of income. Not because they wrote the book again, but because the work continues serving new readers. Musicians experience the same phenomenon. A song is recorded once, yet it may continue earning royalties for decades. Software developers, designers, teachers, photographers, content creators, they all have access to the same opportunity. Build once, benefit repeatedly. Unfortunately, most people never experience this because they quit too early. They upload 3 videos, then stop because no one is watching. They publish 1 ebook, then assume nobody is interested. They launch a course and become discouraged after the first few sales. What they don't realize is that digital assets behave much like planting trees. When you plant a seed, nothing remarkable happens the next morning. You don't dig it up every week to check whether it's growing. You trust the process. You water it, protect it, remain patient. Then one day, it breaks through the surface. Digital assets grow in much the same way. A YouTube channel may seem invisible during its first months. Then suddenly, One video begins attracting attention. That video introduces viewers to another, then another. Momentum begins building quietly, not because luck finally arrived, but because consistency finally had enough time to compound. That's why creators who succeed usually aren't the most talented. They're the ones who simply refuse to stop. Another remarkable feature of digital assets is automation. Imagine receiving an order at 3 o'clock in the morning. You're asleep. Nobody answers the phone. Nobody packs a box. Nobody sends an email manually. The payment is processed automatically. The digital product is delivered instantly. The customer receives exactly what they purchased, without you doing anything at all. Technology becomes your employee. Your website works while you rest. Your videos market your ideas while you spend time with your family. Your email system welcomes new customers while you're on vacation. You've created a business, not another job. That's an important distinction. Many people dream of becoming self-employed, but self-employment isn't always freedom. If the business cannot function without you, you've simply replaced one boss with another. Digital assets offer something much more powerful: the possibility of building systems that continue operating even when you're absent. Of course, this doesn't mean success comes easily. Creating valuable content still requires effort. Learning new skills still demands patience. Improving your work still takes discipline. But the reward is fundamentally different. You're no longer building only today's income. You're building tomorrow's opportunities. Every article, every course, every video, every digital product becomes another employee joining your financial team. And unlike traditional employees, they never sleep, never ask for a raise, never retire. They simply continue creating value, day after day, year after year. The future belongs to people who understand this shift, not because technology replaces hard work, but because technology allows hard work to continue producing results long after the work itself is finished. That's the true purpose of a digital asset: not earning money faster, but earning freedom longer. And once you've built something that continues working without you, you'll never look at your time or your knowledge the same way again. Chapter 6: Why the Wealthy Rarely Spend Their Profits. Imagine owning a small apple orchard. The first harvest finally arrives. After months of waiting, you fill several baskets with beautiful apples. Now imagine doing something unexpected. Instead of selling those apples or planting more trees, you chop down the orchard to build a luxurious picnic area. For a few weeks, it looks beautiful. Friends admire it. Family enjoys it. But next season, there are no apples. No harvest. No future income. The source of your prosperity disappeared the moment you consumed what should have been preserved. Money works exactly the same way. Most people experience their first financial success, then immediately reward themselves. A bonus arrives. They upgrade the car, their investment grows, they celebrate with an expensive vacation. Their side business finally becomes profitable. They increase their lifestyle. Nothing feels unreasonable. After all, they worked hard for it. But the wealthy often respond very differently. When their investments produce profits, their first instinct isn't to spend them. It's to ask, how can these profits produce even more profits? That single habit quietly separates those who become financially independent from those who simply earn good incomes. Imagine investing $1,000. A year later, it grows into $1,100. Many people immediately think, great, I made $100. The wealthy think differently. What happens if I leave the entire $1,100 invested? The following year, returns are earned not only on the original investment, but also on last year's profit. Then it happens again, and again, and again. This is the quiet force Albert Einstein is often credited with praising as the power of compound growth. Whether or not the famous quotation is authentic, the principle certainly is. Compounding is one of the few forces capable of making small beginnings become extraordinary outcomes. Imagine a snowball rolling down a mountain. At first, it barely grows. A little snow sticks to it. Nothing impressive. But as it continues rolling, the surface area becomes larger. It gathers even more snow. Soon, the snowball grows faster than anyone expected. Money behaves in much the same way. Early growth appears almost invisible. Many people become discouraged because progress seems painfully slow. But compounding rewards patience, not excitement. The first years build the foundation. The later years create the transformation. This is exactly why wealthy investors protect their profits so carefully. They understand that today's earnings aren't just money, they're future workers, future investments, future opportunities. Every dollar reinvested today becomes another employee joining tomorrow's financial team. Now consider two investors. Both earned $10,000 in investment profits this year. The first investor immediately spends every dollar. A luxury vacation, new furniture, an upgraded lifestyle. Wonderful memories are created. But financially, next year begins exactly where the previous one ended. The second investor enjoys a small portion of the profit, then reinvests the rest. That reinvested capital produces additional returns. Those returns are reinvested again. Over time, the gap between the two investors becomes enormous, not because one earned dramatically more, but because one allowed profits to continue reproducing. The other consumed the seeds meant for next season's harvest. This is one of the most difficult financial lessons to practice, because our emotions constantly encourage immediate gratification. We naturally want to enjoy success the moment it arrives. There's nothing wrong with celebrating achievements. The problem begins when celebration becomes consumption. The wealthy delay major rewards, not because they dislike luxury, but because they understand timing. Buying a luxury watch today may feel satisfying. Owning investments that eventually purchase the watch for you feels completely different. One reduces your wealth. The other demonstrates it. Think about Warren Buffett. Despite becoming one of the wealthiest people in history, he spent decades allowing Berkshire Hathaway's profits to remain inside the business. Rather than extracting every dollar for personal spending, he continuously reinvested capital into additional businesses and investments. Each profitable company helped finance the purchase of another. The machine kept expanding. That's an important distinction. Wealth isn't simply created by earning. It's multiplied through intelligent reinvestment. Every successful business understands this principle. When a company earns profits, it often uses them to develop better products, expand into new markets, hire talented people, improve technology. Growth finances future growth. Individuals can apply the exact same strategy. Your salary creates savings. Savings purchase assets. Assets generate profits. Profits purchase more assets. The system begins strengthening itself. At that point, you're no longer depending entirely on your own labor. Your capital has started participating in the process. That's when wealth begins accelerating. Of course, this doesn't mean never enjoying life. Financial freedom isn't about permanent sacrifice. It's about sequencing. Build the engine first, then enjoy the fuel it produces. Because once your investments generate enough income, luxury no longer feels expensive. It's simply another product of the system you've already built. The remarkable thing about this approach is that it becomes easier over time. Every new investment contributes to the next. Every profitable asset strengthens the entire portfolio. Momentum replaces struggle. Eventually, you reach a point where your investments are earning more in a month than your paycheck once earned in an entire year. That's the quiet destination the wealthy have been moving toward all along. Not endless work, not endless consumption, but a financial system powerful enough to keep growing, even while they sleep. And once you understand that profits are not rewards to be spent, but seeds to be planted, you'll never look at investment returns the same way again. Chapter 7, Hidden Wealth. Sitting inside your home. Imagine walking through your own house. You pass the living room, the kitchen, the garage, the backyard. Everything feels familiar. You've lived there for years. But now imagine someone quietly asking you a surprising question. How much of your home's value is actually working for you? Most people would never think to ask. To them, a home is simply a place to live, a place to raise children, a place to create memories. And those things are incredibly valuable. But the wealthy often see one additional possibility. They don't just ask, where do I live? They ask, how can this property create value while I live here? That shift in thinking has quietly created enormous wealth for millions of people. Think about a homeowner with a large, unused basement. For years, it remains empty. Storage boxes, old furniture, things nobody has touched in ages. One day, they renovate it into a small apartment. Suddenly, that forgotten space begins generating monthly income. Nothing about the house changed dramatically. The opportunity had always been there. It simply wasn't being used. Now imagine another family with an extra bedroom. Instead of leaving it vacant, they rent it to a student or a traveling professional. Every month, that unused space helps cover the mortgage. What was once an expense quietly becomes part of the solution. The same principle applies far beyond housing. Some homeowners convert garages into small studios. Others create home offices for consulting businesses. Some rent parking spaces in busy cities. Others lease storage areas. The point isn't that everyone should do the same thing. The point is learning to recognize hidden assets, because wealth often begins by seeing opportunity where others only see routine. Most people believe wealth requires constantly buying new things. The wealthy often begin by asking a different question. What do I already own that I'm not fully using? That's an incredibly powerful habit. Imagine opening your closet, your garage, your spare room, your backyard, your skills, your equipment, your knowledge. How many of those resources sit unused for months or even years? Now imagine putting just one of them to work. A camera becomes a photography business. A spare room becomes rental income. A woodworking hobby becomes handcrafted furniture sold online. A passion for teaching becomes an online tutoring service. The asset already existed. It simply needed purpose. This is why entrepreneurship often starts with observation, not money. Many successful businesses didn't begin with enormous investment. They began with someone noticing unused potential, an empty space, an overlooked need, an ordinary resource. Then asking, how can this create value for someone else? That's how hidden wealth is uncovered. Not by discovering something completely new, but by looking differently at what already exists. Another advantage of making better use of existing assets is that it reduces risk. Buying a completely new investment often requires significant capital. But improving something you already own may require far less. You're building from a foundation that's already there. The wealthy constantly look for efficiency, not because they're unwilling to spend money, but because they understand the value of maximizing existing resources before chasing new ones. Think about a farmer. Before buying another field, a wise farmer first asks, am I fully using the land I already have? If half the existing field remains uncultivated, purchasing another one won't solve the real problem. The same logic applies to personal finance. Before searching for another source of income, look carefully at the assets already surrounding you: your home, your experience, your network, your talents, your time. Every one of them contains potential that may not yet be producing value. Of course, not every opportunity fits every person. Some people value privacy more than rental income. Others prefer simplicity over managing additional responsibilities. There's nothing wrong with that. Financial wisdom isn't about copying someone else's strategy. It's about recognizing your available options, then choosing intentionally. The important lesson is awareness, because once you begin looking at your possessions through the eyes of an investor, you stop seeing only expenses. You begin seeing possibilities. A room becomes potential income. A hobby becomes a business. Knowledge becomes a product. Experience becomes consulting. Your perspective changes before your finances do, and that's usually how lasting wealth begins. Not with a dramatic breakthrough, but with a quiet realization. I already own more opportunity than I ever realized. That realization changes everything, because once you understand that hidden assets exist all around you, you'll stop asking, what do I need to buy? And start asking a far more powerful question. What can I build from what I already have? For many people, that single question becomes the beginning of an entirely different financial future. Chapter 8. Never depend on just one source of income. Imagine standing on a sturdy wooden bridge. It stretches across a wide river. At first glance, it looks perfectly safe. But then you notice something unusual. The entire bridge is supported by only one pillar. If that single pillar weakens, everything above it collapses. Now imagine your financial life. For millions of people, their entire lifestyle rests on one pillar: their paycheck. Every bill, every mortgage payment, every grocery trip, every family vacation. Everything depends on one stream of income continuing uninterrupted. As long as the paycheck arrives, life feels secure. But what happens if it doesn't? A company restructures, an industry changes, a recession arrives, a health problem appears unexpectedly, or technology replaces the job entirely. Suddenly, the single pillar begins to crack, and with it, years of financial stability can disappear almost overnight. The wealthy understand this risk better than most. That's why they rarely rely on only one source of income. Instead, they build multiple streams that support one another. Imagine a table with only one leg. It cannot stand. Add a second leg. It becomes more stable. A third, even stronger. A fourth, now, it's difficult to knock over. Income works exactly the same way. One stream provides survival. Several streams create resilience. Perhaps someone earns a salary during the day. Their investments generate dividends every quarter. A rental property sends monthly income. An online business produces sales around the clock. A book earns royalties. A portfolio grows quietly in the background. If one stream slows down, the others continue flowing. Financial pressure becomes far less overwhelming. This doesn't happen overnight. No one wakes up with 5 income streams. They build them, one at a time, one thoughtful decision after another. Think about a farmer. Would a wise farmer plant only one crop? Probably not. If disease affects that single crop, the entire year's work could disappear. Instead, many farmers diversify, different crops, different harvest seasons, different sources of revenue. They understand that diversity reduces risk. Your financial life deserves the same protection. Depending on one paycheck in a constantly changing world can be surprisingly fragile. The goal isn't to abandon your career. Your job may be the foundation that finances everything else. The goal is to slowly build additional pillars beside it. At first, the second stream may feel tiny. Perhaps it earns only enough to pay one utility bill each month. That doesn't sound impressive. But remember, every large river begins as a small stream. Given enough time, consistent growth changes everything. Many people delay building additional income because they believe they need enormous amounts of money to begin. That's rarely true. Sometimes, the second stream begins with knowledge. Teaching online, freelance consulting, writing, designing, photography, programming, coaching. Sometimes it begins with ownership, dividend-paying investments, rental income, business partnerships, digital products. The important point isn't which path you choose. The important point is recognizing that depending entirely on one source leaves your future vulnerable. Here's another interesting observation. When you have only one income source, every financial decision feels heavier. You become afraid to negotiate, afraid to change careers, afraid to take calculated risks, because losing that single paycheck threatens everything. But as additional streams grow, something unexpected happens. Your confidence grows too. You negotiate differently. You make decisions more calmly. You stop operating from fear and begin operating from choice. That's one of the hidden benefits of multiple income streams. They don't only strengthen your finances, they strengthen your peace of mind. Financial freedom isn't just about money. It's also about reducing anxiety, knowing that one unexpected event won't completely derail your future. Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering one income stream has disappeared. Would your entire life stop, or would several others quietly continue supporting you? That's the question wealthy people ask long before problems appear. They prepare during stable seasons, not during storms. This principle has become even more important in today's world. Technology changes industries faster than ever before. Entire professions evolve, new opportunities emerge, old ones disappear. The people who adapt most successfully are often those who already have multiple ways of creating value. They aren't trapped, they're flexible. And flexibility has become one of the most valuable financial assets anyone can possess. So don't think of additional income streams as extra work. Think of them as additional pillars beneath your future. One pillar may support today, but several pillars can support a lifetime. Because true financial security isn't created by hoping one paycheck lasts forever. It's created by patiently building a system where your future no longer depends on a single source. That's when money stops feeling uncertain and begins feeling dependable, one stream at a time. Chapter 9, the side business that quietly changes everything. Imagine receiving your paycheck on Friday. You smile, bills are paid, groceries are covered, the mortgage is handled, everything seems under control. Then, a few days later, an unexpected expense appears. The car needs repairs, a medical bill arrives, your child needs something for school. Suddenly, the paycheck that once felt comfortable no longer seems enough. This is the reality for millions of people. Not because they lack discipline, but because they rely on only one engine to move their financial lives forward. The wealthy often choose a different approach. They don't immediately quit their jobs. They don't gamble everything on a risky startup. Instead, many quietly begin building a second engine, a business that starts small, but has the potential to grow far beyond the limits of a salary. That's one of the greatest advantages of a side business. It allows you to create additional income without immediately abandoning your primary source of security. Think about someone who loves baking. Friends constantly compliment their cakes. For years, it remains just a hobby. Then one weekend, they accept a small order. A few weeks later, another customer arrives through word of mouth. Soon, weekend orders become regular. Months later, the income begins covering household expenses. Nothing dramatic happened overnight. There was no viral success, no overnight millionaire story, just one skill, repeated consistently. Now imagine someone who enjoys photography. At first, they simply photograph friends and family. Eventually, they photograph local events, then businesses, then weddings. Years later, what once began as a personal interest has quietly become an independent source of income. Notice the pattern. Most successful businesses don't begin with extraordinary ideas. They begin with ordinary value, a skill, a solution, a service, something that genuinely helps other people. Because business at its core is remarkably simple. The more problems you solve, the more valuable you become. The more valuable you become, the more opportunities naturally appear. The wealthy understand this deeply. They don't constantly ask, how can I earn more money? They ask, how can I create more value? Money usually follows value, not the other way around. Think about every successful company you've ever encountered. None became successful simply because they wanted money. They solved a problem, made something easier, saved people time, reduced stress, created convenience, improved someone's life. Profit became the reward for creating value consistently. The exact same principle applies to individuals. You don't need millions of dollars to begin building a business. Often, you simply need one useful skill, one satisfied customer, then another, then another. A side business also teaches something incredibly valuable: ownership. When you work for someone else, your income depends largely on the value you personally create each day. When you own a business, your income can eventually depend on systems, processes, employees, technology, satisfied customers returning again and again. That's a completely different financial model. Instead of selling only your time, you're building something that can continue creating value beyond today's work. Of course, starting a business isn't always easy. There will be uncertainty, mistakes, slow months, moments of frustration. Every successful entrepreneur has experienced them. But those challenges also develop something priceless: the ability to solve problems, to adapt, to communicate, to understand customers. Those skills remain valuable for the rest of your life. Even if one business fails, the knowledge doesn't disappear. It becomes the foundation for the next opportunity. Many people wait for the perfect business idea, the perfect timing, the perfect market, the perfect conditions. But perfection rarely arrives. Progress belongs to those willing to begin before everything feels certain. A small online store, a consulting service, a digital course, a YouTube channel, a newsletter, a software tool, a local service business. Every successful company started as something small, something uncertain, something imperfect. What separated success from failure wasn't perfection, it was persistence. Another remarkable benefit of a side business is that it changes the way you see the world. Instead of seeing only expenses, you begin noticing opportunities. A local business with poor marketing, a product customers keep requesting, an inefficient process that could be improved. Problems become possibilities. Every inconvenience becomes a question. Could this be solved better? That entrepreneurial mindset often becomes more valuable than the business itself. Because once you learn to recognize opportunity, you never stop seeing it. Eventually, your side business may remain exactly that, an additional source of income. Or it may slowly grow until it surpasses your full-time salary. Either outcome is a victory, because you've built another engine supporting your financial future. You've created another pillar beneath your life. And perhaps most importantly, you've proven something to yourself, that your ability to create income isn't limited to one employer, one paycheck, or one career. It comes from your ability to create value. And once you truly understand that, you stop thinking like someone searching for work and begin thinking like someone capable of building wealth. That shift in identity may be the most valuable asset you'll ever own. Chapter 10. The money mindset of the 1%. Imagine two people standing in exactly the same city. They walk the same streets, read the same news, experience the same economy. One spends the next 20 years becoming financially independent. The other spends the next 20 years wondering why money always seems just out of reach. What separates them? Not intelligence, not education, not even opportunity. More often than people realize, it's perspective. Because long before wealth appears in a bank account, it usually appears in the mind. The wealthy don't simply behave differently, they think differently. And those thoughts quietly shape every financial decision that follows. Imagine being offered two choices. The first promises immediate comfort, the second promises greater freedom 10 years from now. Most people naturally choose comfort. The wealthy often choose freedom, not because they're immune to temptation, but because they've trained themselves to think beyond today. They understand something incredibly important. Every financial decision is really a decision about the future. Money is simply the tool. Time is the true prize. That's why the 1% constantly ask questions that many people never consider. Instead of asking, how much does this cost? They ask, what is the long-term cost of not investing? Instead of asking, can I afford this? They ask, will this move me closer to financial independence? Instead of asking, how much can I earn this month? They ask, what can I build that continues producing value next year? Notice how every question points toward the future, because successful investors understand that today's choices quietly become tomorrow's circumstances. Think about planting an oak tree. The best time was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. The same is true for investing. Every year spent waiting is a year compounding never gets back. That's why wealthy people rarely wait for perfect conditions. They begin with what they have, then improve along the way. Another powerful mindset is accepting that mistakes are part of learning. Most people fear losing money so much that they never invest at all. The wealthy certainly dislike losses, but they understand something different. A carefully considered mistake often teaches lessons worth far more than its cost. Every successful entrepreneur has failed. Every experienced investor has made poor decisions. Every business owner has faced uncertainty. The difference isn't avoiding mistakes. It's learning faster than everyone else. Imagine learning to ride a bicycle. Falling isn't evidence that cycling doesn't work. It's evidence that you're learning balance. Financial education works much the same way. Experience develops judgment. Judgment improves future decisions. That's why wealthy people invest continuously in learning. Books, mentors, courses, conversations, new skills. Not because knowledge alone creates wealth, but because better decisions create better outcomes. Another characteristic of financially successful people is patience. Modern culture celebrates speed, instant success, instant delivery, instant gratification. We want results immediately. But wealth has always moved at a different pace. Trees don't become forests overnight. Businesses rarely become global companies in a year. Investment portfolios don't usually transform within months. The 1% understand this. They don't become discouraged by slow beginnings because they know momentum compounds. Every productive habit strengthens the next. Every investment supports another. Every lesson improves future judgment. Eventually, what once looked like slow progress becomes extraordinary acceleration. That's the quiet magic of consistency. Another important shift involves ownership. Consumers think about buying products. Owners think about owning the companies that sell those products. Consumers purchase entertainment. Owners invest in businesses creating entertainment. Consumers admire successful companies. Owners ask how they can participate in their growth. It's a subtle change. But over decades, it completely transforms financial outcomes. The wealthy also recognize that money is neither good nor bad. It's simply a tool. In the hands of one person, it creates opportunity. In the hands of another, it disappears as quickly as it arrives. Money simply magnifies habits that already exist. That's why mastering yourself is often more important than mastering finance. Discipline, patience, curiosity, responsibility. These qualities quietly determine how money behaves once it enters your life. And perhaps the greatest lesson of all, the 1% don't chase wealth as an end in itself. They chase freedom. Freedom to spend time with family, freedom to choose meaningful work, freedom to support causes they believe in, freedom to live according to their own values. Money becomes valuable because of what it makes possible, not because of what it says about someone's worth. As we come to the end of this journey, think back to everything we've explored together. Money works best when it has a mission. Assets create freedom. Lifestyle should grow after investments, not before. Multiple income streams create stability. Digital assets continue working after you're finished. Rental income rewards patience. Businesses solve problems. Profits should often be planted before they're spent, and wealth usually begins with a change in perspective. Long before it appears in your bank account, you don't need to master every lesson today. You simply need to begin. One investment, one asset, one better decision, then another, and another. Because financial freedom is rarely created by one extraordinary moment. It's built through thousands of ordinary choices, made consistently over a lifetime. One day, you'll look back and realize something remarkable. The life you once imagined wasn't created by luck. It was created by the quiet decisions you chose to make, starting today. Thank you for listening. And remember, the greatest investment you will ever make is the one you make in the way you think about money. Closing reflection. Before we end, take one last look at your financial life, not through the lens of what you earn, but through the lens of what your money is doing. Ask yourself, how many of your dollars are working today? How many assets are quietly building tomorrow? How many income streams could continue supporting your life if you stopped working for a month? You don't need every answer right now. You don't need to become an expert overnight. You simply need to start asking better questions. Because every financially independent person once stood exactly where you are today. They weren't born understanding investing. They weren't born owning businesses. They weren't born with multiple streams of income. They learned, they acted, and most importantly, they stayed consistent. Remember, financial freedom is rarely the result of one brilliant investment. It's the result of hundreds of ordinary decisions. Repeated with patience, every dollar you save, every asset you acquire, every skill you develop, every book you read, every business you build, every investment you make. They may seem small on their own, but together they become the foundation of a completely different future. Years from now, you probably won't remember the price of the phone you almost bought, or the impulse purchase you decided to skip. But you will remember the moment you decided to make your money work harder than you did. That decision has the power to change generations. Because wealth isn't only about creating a better life for yourself. It's about creating more choices, more security, more opportunity for the people who come after you. If this audiobook encouraged you to think differently about money, then don't let these ideas remain inspiration. Turn them into action. Choose one lesson that resonated with you today. Apply it this week. Then choose another. Small actions, repeated consistently, create extraordinary results. Thank you for spending your time with us. Until next time, keep learning, keep building, and never stop investing in the one asset that can never be taken away from you, your ability to think differently.